Welcome to the Built to Last podcast, a community for coaches founded on the principles encourage, equip, and empower. We are performance coaches working for eternal purpose. Now, here are your co-hosts, Charlie Ray and Justin Bentavania.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Built to Last. We're super excited to have you with us. We are right now in the midst of the coronavirus season, and I know a lot of you guys are on quarantine. And just looking at some other podcasts, I think views are down overall, and I just want to encourage you guys, not for our benefit, but for yours, to continue to keep pursuing knowledge. I know there are a lot of free CEUs out right now from the NSCA and all other different organizations. I know a lot of coaches are getting together and putting free clinics on. I just want to encourage you guys, for us as a community, to continue to pursue knowledge, to get better, and make the best use of this time. If you're new to us at Built to Last, what we are is a community of coaches founded on the principles encourage, equip, and empower. What we want to do is provide you guys with resources to be the best you can be and build lasting relationships, lasting impact on your athletes, on your family, all of the above. Right now, this coronavirus season has not been, I think, the best news for most people. But I know one person who has made the best use of his time is this guy on the other end of the mic. Just got married a couple weeks ago. So congratulations to you and your new bride.
Yeah, man, it has been awesome getting to have the marriage life. And, God has just been faithful in this time of it's COVID-19. So we're all stuck at home, and I get an opportunity not to have to focus a ton on work, but I get to focus on my new bride. And so that's been just an incredible gift from God. But guys, one of the things that we want to do with this podcast is be a resource and a ministry of some sort to encourage you guys. And so we try to do a Bible verse each month. So the Bible verse that we picked for this one is Hebrews 12, 1-4. And it says, "Therefore, since we are surrounded by such a great cloud of witnesses, let us throw off everything that hinders and the sin that so easily entangles. And let us run with perseverance the race marked out for us, fixing our eyes on Jesus, the author and perfecter of our faith. For the joy set before him, he endured the cross, scorning its shame, and sat down at the right hand of the throne of God. Consider him who endured such opposition from sinful man, that we may not grow weary and lose heart." And I really want to focus on that last part. We need to take time during this time of COVID and at all times in our life as Christians to consider Jesus Christ, consider how he endured opposition from sinful men. Why did he do it? He did it for the joy set before him. And I just want to encourage you guys, don't grow weary, don't grow tired, don't lose heart during this time of just having to wait through this thing. Focus on your relationship with God. Everything else is going to fall in place. Our episode, we had one of my mentors, Coach Stephen Rassel. He is a beast, man of God, humble, just extremely well-versed in mentorship and in strategizing. One of the best in the field in regards to those things. His background, so I actually met him, man, it might have been like 6 or 7 years ago at a NSCA conference, and it was an incredible conference. And I wanted to get to know him. I kind of did an interview with him. He was currently at Weber International at the time. And so I was trying to do an interview with him and ended up not working out. It ended up going another way, but he is just an incredible man of God. And I was like, man, I want to stay in contact with this guy. So I just started phone calling him. We started talking about the 3 different areas, spiritual growth, professional growth, and relationship growth. How do you mentor? How do you build a family? How do you treat people? So he's an incredible man of God. He was at the Daytona Cubs head strength and conditioning coach for about 7 months. That's kind of where he got his start. And then he became the head strength and conditioning coach at Weber International University. He was there for 9 years and 6 months. He built an army from ground zero. Oh, yeah. I mean, Weber International University is known today as a powerhouse in strength and conditioning for internships, coming through and building them out. Hundreds of people have come through that program now. And then God opened the door for him to be the minor league strength conditioning coordinator for the Toronto Blue Jays. And he's been there for a little bit over a year and a half. He has his master's degree in MBA at Weber International. And like I said, guys, you guys are in for an amazing episode.
Yeah, and in this episode, guys, and like you're saying, Charlie, one of the biggest things that stood out to me as an overarching takeaway is that mentorship aspect. Again, Coach has a lot of experience in the mentorship side of things, and it's different when you hear someone give their knowledge on something versus their experience, right? And coach has a lot of experience in building interns, building coaches, and just building people. And he gives a lot of tips in this episode about being a mentor, how to find a mentor. And beyond that, guys, he gave another great tip about what he calls Starbucks mornings, something that I want to start taking away from this. And I am not a coffee drinker by any means. I just don't like the taste of it. My wife does, so maybe she can go to Starbucks, but I'd like to keep us together. And so what I said is that we're going to, right now, especially during coronavirus, we're going to wake up one morning early together as a couple, and we are going to work on our goals, something that could be completely unrelated to our professional career. Maybe it could be, but something maybe that we want to accomplish that we just don't usually have the time to work on. We're going to make the most of this time when we have, a work from home setting where we can get up early together. And I took that away directly from this episode from Coach Rassel. And so there's a tip right there. I hope you guys stick around though and listen to the rest of it, because there is so much to take away, guys. Enjoy.
Hey guys, welcome back for another episode of Built to Last. And we're here with Coach Stephen Rassel. Coach Stephen Rassel has been one of my mentors for about 4 or 5 years now. We've known each other for a while, and it's been just an honor, Coach, to have you on this episode. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, humbled and honored to be a part of it, and excited about what you guys are doing. We talked about this a bit in the past, and in full support. I think it's gonna impact a lot of people. It already has impacted a lot of people, and it's good stuff.
Awesome. We'll just roll right into it, Coach. So if you could just give us a background into your journey in this amazing field of strength and conditioning.
Yeah. So I played college athletics. I played college baseball, and that was kind of my first love was baseball, and I got fortunate enough to be able to play that through pretty much my whole life up to that point. And when that was winding down, I had changed my major several times in college and landed on human performance down at Florida Gulf Coast University, and really liked the idea of strength and conditioning. I had experienced a strength and conditioning coach only my senior year. Was my first taste at someone besides the baseball coach running the weight program. And so, it definitely caught my attention of something I'd love to stay in athletics on. And through some internships, ended up getting involved in pro baseball right off the bat. Did some time with the Boston Red Sox, sometimes with the Chicago Cubs, and then got an opportunity to take a role in leading the strength and conditioning program at Weber International University. There was Brad Loki was there previously and got some things off the ground running, and did a fantastic job kind of laying a foundation there. And I was fortunate enough to be able to kind of jump in and pick up basically where he left off and keep building, and ended up spending 10 years there at Weber. Ended up leaving there. It was right at a year ago. December 31st was, actually it was probably about January 5th or 6th, but December 31st may have been one of the last times I was around there on campus. Popped back a couple of times early January, but wrapped up my time there as associate athletic director and head strength and conditioning coach, and just grew a ton. Loved being able to build and develop a program. Loved the mentorship role that I did with the staff that we had, and loved expanding into the athletic department and going that route. And thought that was the route God had for me in leadership, was going athletic administration and kind of playing a role in overseeing strength and conditioning, and still kind of keeping my feet wet that way. But as things unfolded, I got an opportunity to interview and apply for a spot with the Toronto Blue Jays, whom I'm with now. And so for the past year, I've been the minor league strength and conditioning coordinator with the Toronto Blue Jays. So I'm based out of Florida. Weber International was also in Florida, so it was a nice, easy move for the family. And I love it. I just finished my first full year with them. Will be entering my second season coming up here in January, full throttle here. So very excited, and it's been a whirlwind, but it's been fun.
That's awesome, Coach. And now, would you mind going into a little bit of detail for some of the listeners who don't know maybe all the intricacies? What is your new role exactly?
So as minor league strength and conditioning coordinator, so a lot of people who aren't familiar with baseball don't know the depth of the minor league system and the farm system. So with us, there's 7-8 different levels in the minor leagues. There's AAA, AA, high A, low A, and that makes up what we consider full season. And then we have 2 short season teams, a rookie league team, and then we have a couple of teams down in the Dominican with our international academy. And so there's 9, 10 teams out of all of that combined. And so I oversee basically the whole program with all of that, the whole minor league system. It's for us, it's roughly probably about 300 athletes, 300 ball players. And so we'll have a strength and conditioning coach at every level, a few down in the DR, and then a rehab strength and conditioning coach as well. So I kind of oversee that hub. Every major league team has a little bit different structure with how they organize. We'll have a major league assistant that kind of focuses on the 40-man guys, and then I'll focus on kind of the rest of the group. And then we actually have a head of strength and conditioning above that oversees major league and minor league wings. So that's kind of my role in the position there is I'm leading and managing a group of strength and conditioning coaches within a high performance department. And there's coordinators of every other department. There's mental performance, nutrition, there's sports science, there's athletic training and the medical rehab side of things. So yeah, it's good stuff.
And that's something that we've even been talking about in our department for sure, especially right now with where the field's going with sports performance as opposed to just strength and conditioning.
Right.
In your role specifically in the department, I understand you oversee. Are you still in the weight room coaching athletes, or are you more behind the scenes administrating?
Yeah, so I'll jump in. So with my role, one of the major components is to lead certain portions of like big camps or big, I guess, high population environments. So obviously like spring training right around the corner, we'll have probably 160, 180 guys at one time in regular spring training. And I'll kind of help lead and guide the schedule. I'll jump in and coach and train a little bit, but it's not like my staff needs me to do that for exemplary purposes at all. I just, I get a chance to still do it. I'm fortunate to not just be able to sit back. I can actually jump in and get in the trenches, in the weeds as much as I want to, but also I have to make sure I don't sacrifice the zoomed out oversight, 10,000 foot view that I have to make sure I maintain as well, and coordinating some other things at the higher up. So, and then once everyone breaks camp, the only coaching I do at that point is I'll assist with some things, maybe with our rehab group or our rookie league that's still based out of Florida. But I'll cover for our coaches. We allow our coaches to take, we call them personal days. So four personal days throughout the season where I'll jump in, and for 1 week, I'll be the acting strength and conditioning coach for AAA while they're taking their personal days. It gives me an awesome opportunity to dive deeper with the players, good opportunity to get a pulse of how the program's going at that location, give the coach some feedback here or there. But I really enjoy it. You get a chance to dive back in for a week at a time, but also experience some other parts of strength and conditioning that I don't often get to do all the time, and working with those players one-on-one.
I appreciate you sharing that, Coach, too, because I think with where the field's going now, like we said, there's so many different niches, right? So people go like yourself into more of a baseball niche, and then you have people who are more like that sports science GPS niche, and some people focus more on adding the nutrition, the certification to their arsenal or their toolbox. So I think that's great to give that perspective for anybody who is interested in going down that road. If you don't mind, Coach, could you talk a little bit about your department philosophy? Because I know obviously you ran the department at Weber International for about 10 years, and now you're running the department for the minor league organization with the Blue Jays. What's kind of your philosophy in terms of, you could take it in the programming direction, or you can talk more about just structure and things like that, and what you preach to your staff?
Yeah. Well, I'm fortunate that when I jumped in, there wasn't a complete overhaul or anything like that necessary here. It was a really good fit for what I would have wanted to do anyways. So me coming in last year, the previous several minor league coordinators who were in my role are actually still in the organization at higher level positions. So it's been a nice feeder system just historically within the Blue Jays, where it's been a nice facelift every year, just adding some more spokes to the wheel, not reinventing the wheel. And so I think the biggest thing, like from a programming perspective, we follow a lot of Dan John's basic layout of squat, hinge, push, pull, carry, or fifth movement, core-based movement as kind of our primary layout. And then we add a lot of variety and in the exercise selection, progressions, regressions that we do within that. And then we also have a lot of variety with how we do our exercise, our sets and reps, our prescription. So whatever intensity we're using, whatever the focus is or the goal is for the different levels of players, because we'll have guys from, age 15 down in our international academy. And so we're looking at, middle school, high school type programs, all the way up to guys in their 30s who are trying to continue to play the best of their ability. which we're obviously not looking at anything close to a high school program at that point. You're looking for the best you can do for just health and making sure that guy can maintain and stay on the field as long as he can, and obviously perform as well. So we have a lot of variety with how we implement that system, but that system is how we maintain some continuity as players move and shift up and down. It's a unique challenge, as you can imagine, when you have a player who's with one strength coach, and we allow some freedom to program within that skeleton, within that structure. But if you don't have that structure, when a player moves from one spot to the next and they have a new strength and conditioning coach, that coach may not understand or design the same type of program that the previous coach did. If you don't have that continuity and that structure there, it's a lot tougher to maintain the flow and I guess the transfer of progress at all times, especially in baseball where there's such a long season. You have to continue to chip away at things in season. So yes, that's kind of how we lay things out in terms of X's and O's. I know a lot of times we don't get a chance to talk about some X's and O things in podcasts, but I'd love that. If anyone ever wanted to reach out and talk shop, I'd love to dive in more on it. But yeah, from a departmental standpoint, I love what the Blue Jays do as an organization. We have something called clear values, collaborate, learn, and then empower. So the CLE, collaborate, learn, empower. It's a really big push right off the bat. So as soon as I came on board, it was involve myself with everyone else that's in other departments, constantly learning and making sure I'm on my toes with what's out there, what's cutting edge. And then empower is making sure I'm involving as much people as I can that I'm working with, but also that are working underneath me and passing things on to them to allow them to lead and kind of branch out as well. CLEA, so achieve. So obviously we are results driven as well. I came out of a not-for-profit environment, a small college setting, and shifting gears into the professional world, and definitely for-profit type of environment and pushing with a strategy with the main goal of winning, not just in the college setting of, the majority of these athletes we have are not going to continue to do this the rest of their life. Well, in this is that next step. The guys that ended up doing this for the rest of their life, that's the group that I get to work with now. So it's a different type of focus there. Achieve is definitely still one of the main objectives is to perform and to actually to show what you can do. So at the very end, like wrapping all that back up, respect is huge. Just making sure that you can maintain that across the board. So we have a really good president, CEO. We have a really good GM, and they set the tone from the top of the organization all the way through. And everybody is bought into this system and the values and how we involve from one department to the next. Each one of those stands for something pivotal that we push for constantly.
Coach Rassel, how do you go about creating an opportunity for your staff to come together with these core values? I mean, do you guys have staff meetings where you're going over these and you're checking in with them? I mean, you said you want to create a one vision, one mindset, begin with the end in mind type thing. How do you go about mentoring and teaching your staff? What are the differences of what you did at Weber and the things that you did there that you are now adding and putting in place now?
Yeah. Again, I guess one of the biggest differences is that I didn't have to ingrain things and start things from scratch. That, the staff that I inherited were already living these core values. My main objective with this, and this plays big into my spiritual kind of stance and how I view things from just being a believer as well. My biggest role and biggest goal this past year was just building relationships and just getting to know them and how they are living out these values and how they're showing them, how they're demonstrating them, how they're emphasizing them with the players that they're working with. It's never something that I try to be in a rush and push my agenda. And I don't feel like that's the right thing to do in any setting, regardless. But I knew, the excitement I had for 10 years building something and being able to design something and getting a new staff in relatively every other year with GAs, paid interns, volunteers, you get a lot of turnover, and that's not the case where I'm at now. Now, there may be a lot of turnover as guys get other positions, move up the ladder, go to other organizations, change back out of the pro environment. But for the most part, you get guys here for a longer period of time. And it's not about introducing things, which we'll have that as part of our onboarding process with new staff. It's more about kind of getting to know the staff and how they're living these core values. And then me being able to really take the time to build an individualized mentorship model specifically for every coach. What's important to them? What do they want to do? Where do they need to go? What's important to the organization, where we need them to be able to get to, where they need to perform and deliver, and then kind of marrying those two things together and making sure that we constantly get a good pulse of how things are going pretty frequently. So I'm excited being in going into year 2. I'll actually be able to launch a lot of these individualized mentorship plans with the staff versus just observing, absorbing, and playing a nice slow play role of when to interject and when to take action on some things. That was kind of the plan for year 1.
Yeah, you have always told me when you enter into a new department or a new job, your initial, first 6 months, first year, you should be on complete absorb mode and just literally trying to learn what are the rules of the laws of the land, what are the rules of the places that are currently in place, and how can I absorb everything and observe what's going on before I start making big changes and that kind of stuff. And yeah, it's been cool to kind of see you've been preaching that for so long, for 10 years, and then you get a chance, God opened up the door. I remember when we talked about this a year ago, God opened up the door for you to move into this almost dream job, perfect fit for your skill set. And it's cool to see that you've been doing that for this year. Now you have some things to put in place. That's awesome. Well, Coach, changing gears a little bit, going back to your faith and a little bit about your faith story. What's your faith story? I mean, how'd you come to know Christ, and how has that kind of played into your role as a strength and conditioning coach, now as a mentor, as a leader, that type of stuff?
Yeah, I was pretty fortunate that I had a family upbringing that exposed me to just Christianity. I had a variety of experiences growing up. I grew up Catholic. My mom and dad were together up until I think about age 12. And so we went to the Catholic church. And when they split up, my mom kind of basically took us church shopping, and we went to all different types of denominations. And I got to experience yelling, screaming, sprinting around a church, and churches that there's no music, no clapping, no nothing, and everything in between. And it was actually a really crazy experience to go through at 12 years old. But I'm thankful for it, because it just, you don't know what's out there except for whatever you've been exposed to. And that's a big thing I try to keep in my mind even now as I just embrace other people and share my faith with other people, and not even through words, a lot of times just through actions. And how, you've had this mentioned several times on your show, that it's not so much what you say, it's kind of how you live. It's how you act. I think Coach Woodfin was big on that in one of those episodes. But I for me, it was remembering that everybody's had a different experience. Everybody's view of God is shaped by how whatever their world was growing up or coming up, and that's different for everybody. And what made Jesus so great was that he was able to see that. He was able to see people for what they went through and where they were at that point in that time, and he spoke to them from that vantage point, from that angle. And we don't have the same abilities that he had, so we have to slow play that. We have to get to know people possibly a little bit more, taking a little bit more time to do that. And so I started to learn that through the different experiences I had coming up in the different churches, knowing that there was so much out there in the church world, and then obviously so much out there outside of the church world, and then meeting people from different regions of the country and seeing how much different that is in other countries. And so it just made up this kind of hodgepodge of just being open-minded and patient and slow playing, and just, not rushing things, that God will open doors to still live and live openly. But to kind of just be patient with not really forcing and pushing an agenda with Christianity. So that was kind of my upbringing and things. I had different points in my life where I took like more of a turn spiritually, and kind of God maybe did a deeper work in my life at different points in high school, in college as well, and then getting married and then having kids. Like there's been just crossroad moments where I've just taken a deeper turn spiritually more than I thought. I thought I was at a deep point, and then you realize you go through certain things and you just hit a different level and a different angle or a different vantage point on things. So it's been a fun journey through embracing faith through work and through decisions and through God's guidance. But yeah, it's great. I mean, he's still, even, and we were talking right before for prayer requests. I mean, even now with parenting and trying to figure things out, it's a roller coaster. But I guess kind of just an exciting journey is really what this spiritual thing has been for me. People think it's bland and dry that don't know it and haven't experienced it, but man, it's been pretty exciting for me.
And isn't it funny how it's so much the opposite, right? People would think it's a lot of times a list of do's and don'ts or rules that we have to follow or boxes we need to be checking, but it's the most fulfilling life possible. I always tell people I have more joy in my life after I gave my life to Christ than before when I was holding on to things for myself. And it's funny just hearing your story. And like you're saying, it is such a personal story, and we all have a unique journey. But actually hearing your story, it's actually very, very similar to my testimony. And my parents got divorced when I was 4. And same thing, we went church shopping and things like that. And
Nice.
been through, all ends of the spectrum. And it's cool just hearing you say that. And so me and you have similarities in our testimony, but obviously there are going to be differences as well. So kind of circling back to some of the things you said values wise in the Blue Jays department organization. Now those core values, obviously you're going to embody them every day and they're part of, you leading the department. And I'm sure you wouldn't have gone there if you didn't agree with those things. Do you have other values, like let's say personal values that you have for your family or a kind of a way that you like to live your life? Whether it be like a mission statement or like an ethos or something like that for yourself personally?
Yeah, I don't have a like a statement or something like that. We had some core values that we used at Weber that were a reflection of my life personally. And actually, it's funny that you say that. My wife and I, we do an end of the year kind of reflection on the year. I do this professionally and do it personally as well, but then we do it corporately, my wife and I. And it's not a regimented like agenda. We went to Starbucks and we're crushing coffee and we're just talking shop about the year. And
That's
and
awesome.
we're talking about, some values for the family for the boys to focus on and things. So there's definitely some things we're maybe growing towards, maybe not something really firm and strict, but definitely some things that we want to instill in them. And maybe we adjust it year to year, kind of like, almost like John Gordon's book, Your One Word, where you kind of, you pray about where you're at in this season in your life. And you pray for that one word to kind of focus on and guide your vision for that year. It's kind of something that I'm looking at doing almost in the core value realm with the family, of not necessarily changing the values, but with everything right now being centered around our kids and they're changing so rapidly from month to month of their development. It's important for us to kind of bring focal points. So humility is a big one. Humility is a big one for me personally all the way through. Just constantly battling pride, battling just human nature in general for me wants to be very competitive and not cutthroat, but definitely competitive. And I want to make sure that I stay humble with that. But it also stems partially from a big belief that I have that I think truly worshiping God is done in its purest way by just living every day with excellence. I think that's what he wants. And that's maximizing your talents, your abilities. And that's doing a really good job at everything that you do. That's being a really good leader for your family. That's being a really good leader at work. But that's also just being a really good listener sometimes and just being open and aware of what God would have for you. So I think just excellence is another key word there, to balance with the humility and not getting big-headed with anything that you get blessed with or that you become responsible for, and always balancing that. And then, there was a couple of words: servant leadership, discipline, and energy were big for us at Weber, and that stemmed out of me just as a person. I like to live life. I like to have some energy about me and passion about me when I do stuff. So that's always been just, if you get in a conversation with me, that tends to bleed out sometimes. And then discipline, just, having a good routine and structure about yourself, and actually not just going off of short-term feelings, but going off of actually sometimes doing things that you don't really want to do. I mean, that's strength and conditioning, right? That's us sometimes training people to do things that they wouldn't have done on their own. That's kind of our role a lot of times. So that was big too. And then obviously servant leadership. I mean, as a believer, you kind of miss the boat if you're not serving and you're not putting other people first. So.
I think that relates directly to what you were saying earlier about building relationships, right? Because like you said, we're asking these kids to get incredibly uncomfortable sometimes and do things they don't want to do. But I don't think it comes without that relationship piece that kind of precedes that request to get uncomfortable under a barbell or whatever the case may be.
Yeah. Yeah, it's big. I mean, we went through 3-dimensional coaching, 3D coaching as an athletic department before I left Weber, and it was big. It's not just training the mental and the physical, but actually getting into the spiritual side of things, and just very blanketly bringing it up to the athletes and the coaches. Like, do you even spend any time considering what is your view spiritually? Like, what do you believe in? Are you just kind of floating through and just dismissing it, or at least draw some attention to how important it is? And everything about your future changes with how you view that and how you view your present. So it's too important to ignore. And then using the doors that open through that conversation to kind of discuss things further.
Yeah, and like with the relationship approach, what you do is you create relational capital, investments into providing opportunities to talk about the spiritual. They know what you're about. They see that you live it out every day, that you are what you say. You're not just talk is cheap, but you actually live out your core values. And so then it opens the door to allow you to have those conversations. And you look at Jesus, and I was just reading this the other day. I think it's John 13. He demonstrates washing his disciples' feet. And then he says that now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you go and do likewise. And by this, people will know who I am by how they see you love one another. And so it's like this field that we're in is such a perfect example of servant leadership and being able to build the relationships. And Coach, I wanted to tie into what you were saying, focusing on meeting people where they're at. If you guys could rewind the episode or just listen back to what he's saying meet people where they're at, focus on learning about their worldview. Something you've always taught me is, do you know your athletes' why? Do you know what makes them tick? What motivates them? What is their why? And something that we even talked about, I don't know, months ago, you're in a situation where a lot of your baseball players are Spanish or speak Spanish. And so this guy started to take Spanish classes, and I don't know how that's going. I'm curious, but he literally told me, I got to meet them where they're at. So I got to speak their language. Like, a big part of my coaching is building that relationship. And how can I build that relationship if I'm not able to speak their language? And so, how's that going?
Bueno, mejor del año pasado.
Nice. Okay.
So obviously going very well.
Yeah, no, it's going well. I'm far from where I want to be. Set some goals with that, but you're right. I mean, it's not something that I'm trying to do to make myself more employable. It's something that I can't reach to, half of our organization in terms of really building a relationship with them, because I can't even talk to them. I can't communicate with them. And even if you know the language, it's different even still culturally. So, I think that's huge. And that's obviously a big reason of why I coach is transformational coaching, not transactional coaching. And so, no different in professional sports here. We're trying to just build these men into being really good men. And that's the cool thing. Like, you hear about a lot of things in the for-profit world where it's win at all costs. And with the Blue Jays, I'm very fortunate that they want to build a really good culture here of the right people. If you follow how they're doing things right now and signing people in the off season and trades, there's a big interview process that goes on with making sure that they're the right fit for the organization. And we're not the only ones that do that, but I'm very proud that that's how our organization does things. And I think it's very important to make sure that you look at that as that's huge. That's everything, is who you surround yourself with and how you're going to build things. It's not win at all costs. It's actually doing it the right way. So yeah, it's awesome.
And even just hearing you talk, Coach, I mean, just and looking at your track record, just because I know where you've been and some of the things you've done, and I think you fully embody what it means to be a great leader. And so, if you don't mind talking a little bit about that, what is a leader? What is a mentor? Is it the same thing? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I appreciate the kind words. I think leadership I go two different angles with it. I love John Maxwell's definition, leadership is influence, but I also know leadership is responsibility. And if there's a ratio there, it's I forget the exact quote, but I know it's something along the lines of 1 part influence, 2 part responsibility. But the idea there being that when you're in a leadership role, yes, like if you have influence, which every one of us does, whether we see it or not, whether we believe it or not, we're influencing somebody around us. If we're ignoring the responsibility side of things, that can be catastrophic, or it could just be like a missed opportunity so much. And the responsibility side of things is just so much more important than the influence side of being a leader. And so I think that's huge, is the influence and the responsibility that what you do and how you carry yourself, how you act, what you say, what you choose not to say, impacts people. It changes people. It influences what happens in the world around you. You can look back, anyone listening right now, at different moments in your life that have had a ripple effect. What if that didn't happen? And think of all the steps that wouldn't have happened since then if some of these small things never happened. So, that's big for me for leadership. And then also, a lot of times for me in my journey, leadership has often been something where there was a problem that needed to be solved, or someone that needed to step in. And in a lot of ways, it was me looking at that opportunity as an opportunity, not an obstacle, but looking at it as something that, okay, God's put me in this position. God's allowed me to get to this point. There's been too much going on for it to just believe in coincidences, right? And so for me, it's really living like God truly does, and believing that God truly has me where he wants me. And so when I face problems, I look at first as God's gifted me with the ability to solve this problem somehow, or be a piece of the puzzle that comes in with that, not necessarily leading the charge. Very often it's a supportive type role, or just asking questions and bringing things up. But a lot of times for me, leadership roles in different positions I've been in has been really embracing that belief that God has me there for a reason, and to kind of almost like put my back against the wall and not just shrug it off and wait for somebody else to address that.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, the strength and conditioning side of things, the athletic director side of things, and a lot of other hats that I was wearing on the academic side, within the athletic department, in the school in general, even in the community, were all based off of that approach. And God drew me into leadership roles within that, of having more influence and responsibility in each of these realms, because of that mindset of just believing that, I'm in this spot. That thought's going through my head of not fully feeling good about how that's going, and I can do something about it for a reason. And maybe I'm not the solution to it, but that spirit splinter, as one of my mentors calls it, it's that thought that keeps coming back about it. I'm not going to ignore that. It's one of those things that I just constantly feel is there. And that's where that leadership kind of challenge meets the Holy Spirit's kind of calling and prompting. And really it's a decision to have that faith that you're the person right there. And that doesn't mean you have the pressure of having to solve the problem. And that's where God's word talks about him guiding you and giving you the words and giving you the process, and
Mm-hmm.
in due time as you're ready for it. But a lot of times it's been me just partnering with other people and learning a ton from them of how to address certain things.
Yeah, regarding mentorship, Coach, what you're saying, just to summarize, actually, it sounds like what you're saying is to grow where you're planted, and also to have in your mind responsibility that, hey, I'm here for a purpose, and that I'm going to grow where I'm planted. Other coaches said, make the big time where you're at. I'm going to focus on what's right in front of me, keeping the big picture in mind, and be fully present with where I'm at. And you always told me, whatever hat you're wearing, if it's the father hat, if it's the coaching hat, the administrator role, you need to be able to adapt and adjust based on your environment. But your core values of who you are as a person remains the same. You're here to be humble, to take responsibility, and to lead with excellence. That's awesome. Regarding mentors, you've been one of my mentors for a long time. What is your encouragement to younger strength coaches listening to this? How do you grow in finding a mentor and in establishing and continuing to have an ongoing relationship with a mentor? How important is that? How do you go about doing that?
Yeah, I think mentorship is funny. There's always a sense of feeling like you're missing out. there could be easily a sense of, I wish I had this person, or I wish I had someone in my life for this or for that. And I would say, before you get to that question, I would say a lot of times for me, it started off differently, where it was, who can I be that person for first? Who can I mentor first? Who can I reach out to and help and kind of pour into first? And a coach of mine, actually, that I had as an intern, then an assistant, taught me, it's very nice, well-rounded to have someone you're pouring into, someone you're being mentored by, and then other people that you're constantly growing and challenging with simultaneously, and having kind of those 3 steps in the mentorship ladder. And I would take it a step further, and having those people within the professional ranks, and then within kind of the personal side of things outside of the profession, just because a lot of times there's such a different perspective within that. But I'd say, I think, it's difficult if you're looking for a mentor. You want to make sure that in this day and age, mentorship, you want it to be a two-way street. You want it to be building a relationship back and forth together. But in a lot of ways, you can learn and you can grow and inherit a lot of qualities about people just by being kind of a disciple and follower of them, not necessarily somebody that's with them every single day and talking to them every single day. And in the information age that we're in, I mean, we're a disciple of Christ right now, and diving into his word and listening to people preach his message, and just like having God speak to us through many, many different people, but we're not necessarily physically with Jesus every single day. And that resonates through just being able to connect with people who have that same like-mindedness. So I think the same can be said on the mentorship side. If anyone's listening and they're discouraged because they don't have someone constantly pouring into them from a spiritual standpoint or a strength conditioning standpoint, or you wish the people you were working for now had this quality or that quality, I'd say that's for one, there's an opportunity in that, for one. But for two, that doesn't have to stop you at all. There's so many people that I've learned from that I've never even met that I would call mentors, because they've had such an influence over my life with how they live.
That's
and
a
how
great
they
point.
live openly. I think that's huge.
Coach, if you don't mind going into detail, I was going to say, would you mind going into one of those people? Like, what maybe is like the biggest mentor you've ever had, or maybe some key people who have been influential in your life?
Yeah, I think so. There's a pastor that I grew up with, his J. Mark Johns. He's a pastor at Canvas Church up in Alachua, Florida, and he's been instrumental for me. He's big in leadership, but love God, love people, serve others is kind of the mentality, and that's just been instilled in me for so long. He's been a major leader in my life. Some of the coaches that I've had growing up, college coaches, high school, even, going all the way back into Little League with my dad. I learned a lot of stuff through sports. And then, just to give an example from a distance, I've never met John Maxwell, but I feel like I'm heavily, heavily influenced by his work and everything that he puts out. And so I would definitely say he's a mentor of mine. And I've never had a conversation with him, never met him, never seen him in person, never, none of that. But I feel heavily, heavily influenced by how he's lived and how he's kind of just shared things openly. So I think there's benefits in having all of that. And actually, I'm really looking forward to having, lived in a new location. A big prayer for my family and I this past year was getting plugged into a small group at a church, getting fed more spiritually, and meeting other people. If what I explained on the work side and the personal side on the mentoring, it's really difficult to get plugged in on the personal side in a new location. If you're strength and conditioning, you're working a lot of hours, and sometimes you don't get much of a social life, or your social life is, for a lot of people, is the nightlife. And that's not exactly a mentorship type environment, So, getting plugged into a church, getting plugged into a small group within the church to meet other people, whether it's other young parents, whether it's like a college and career type group that I could help pour into as well, or, young adults, even whatever, a men's group. I'm looking for, there's a lot of opportunities that we're excited to kind of jump into here as we start 2020. So I think for me personally, that's one of the areas that I can't really rattle off a lot of people locally that I'm excited where God's taken that.
And I like what you were saying at the tail end of that about getting plugged in and the life groups and things like that at church. Are there any other things you do where you say, like, this is part of my daily disciplines or my rituals, or whatever you kind of do to train yourself spiritually and grow in spiritual maturity?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, you wanna have as much quiet time as you can with God, and listening and just silencing things as often as you can, as frequently as you can. There's never too much of that. And unfortunately, when you're going fast pace at work, and when you've got, I've got two little boys that are full throttle constantly. And you might even be able to hear them in the background right now. They're going nuts out there.
I can attest to that. Those little boys will be sprinting around, screaming
Yeah,
nonstop.
they are
They got a
nonstop.
lot of good speed. I mean, track and field's a good profession,
Future athletes.
We're building electric fibers early in this family. But no, but I mean, it's full throttle. It's one of those things where I can never get enough quiet time, and then just quiet time, building some time with my wife to do corporately as well, for her to get time to do. So I'm actually restructuring some things for 2020 now that I got a really good feel for what the schedule is going to be like in pro ball, because it was way different 10 years ago, when I was in it before, and then jump back in now in the role I'm in. So I'm actually looking forward to having like 2 days a week where I still get up early. And so I'm an early kind of guy. So like 4 a.m. is kind of a norm type of morning. But instead of getting up early, going in, training, and then getting my day started before the athletes get in, it may be going in early, going to Starbucks and spending 3-4 hours there early in the morning, and doing on a non-lift day, like a Wednesday maybe, and actually focusing on some personal goals that I've got. And so that's not just on the spiritual side, but I've learned a lot from a guy named Michael Hyatt as well, another guy I've never met, but he does a lot of teaching in terms of, kind of having work-life blend, work-life balance, and also embracing kind of your platform and your voice of what you have. But, one of the things I learned from him was the importance of margin, and making sure that you have enough margin in your life. And that's where the excitement, I guess, when you have enough margin, you start to create new ideas. You get this vision, you get the thoughts going in some new ways, creative ways. The creativity, that was the word I was looking for, creativity. But it also gives you an opportunity to have that space to listen to God, to hear what he's wanting in your life too. And honestly, God's spoken to me heavily over the past 2-3 weeks worth of downtime that I've finally gotten a chance to have, that I don't want to go another 12 months without that. I want to make sure that I'm building that in constantly, because if, in spring training, we'll go 40 days without a day off sometimes. And in season, it's Sundays off only. And I just get so gassed. I just want to relax or just spend time with the family. And so building in 1 to 2 days a week, Starbucks mornings, is going to be huge for me, I think, to maintain the margin and to constantly build in time every week, and not waiting for a vacation or a downtime week to actually do that, but to kind of micro dose it in. So we'll see. Talk to me next year and maybe it's completely different.
Michael Hyatt is awesome. You actually introduced him to me, and his stuff is great. He does talk a lot about, it's kind of that same idea of taking time to sharpen the saw. How do you provide margin? How do you create more energy in your life? You can't create more time, but what you can do is manage your energy and where you put your time and your energy and your focus. So yeah, that's been big for me too, creating margin. Coach, I wanted to ask you in regards to lessons you've learned. So as we get towards the end of this episode, what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned in your personal life, in your spiritual life, and then regarding strength and conditioning, kind of those 3 different avenues?
Yeah. Personal life is definitely, and I guess it blends heavily into the spiritual life, is just patience. I think I always want things. I can see things clearly. I can get a vision for things. I get ideas, but things don't just happen. You have to be patient with things, and God is constantly working, and you have to believe that. And it also goes with how you share the good news with people, how you share the message of Christ with people. It's not an agenda to, when you see someone that is the agenda, is just push. It's patience. It's build a relationship with that person, get to know them, and get an idea even of who they are, what they go through, what they've gone through, how they view things. And no doubt, 100%, every single time, God will open a door at the right time. If you force things and try to force an agenda and force that door open, it doesn't fit, I don't think, into how God works, in being very structured and organized and really flowing through. And so personally and spiritually, that's been huge, is patience and not being so aggressive with like an agenda. And then, I definitely apply that to strength and conditioning as well. But I guess a big lesson learned for me in strength and conditioning was how important it is to truly go through a very tight knit, like fine tooth comb, like interview process when you hire people. I think there's no doubt I've taken chances, heavy chances on staff members in the past, and sometimes it goes great, sometimes it doesn't. But I can definitely say that times where I've been lazy, or times where I didn't put the work in on who I was hiring and who I was going to bring in as a staff member, or even as somebody I was going to work with, or as an athletic department, somebody that maybe was just going to be within the department that I never even really worked with or oversaw or under or anything, just had a role in being part of the interview committee. And with the Blue Jays, it's heavy too. I think when you can build the right people around you, it makes it so much more exciting and enticing to actually mentor and to pour into as much as you can. And I'm not talking about, necessarily looking for the perfect person in everything you do. I think I've learned that you have to have your core values and your culture that that it will vibe with that person, but you want them to be able to live that out differently. You want them to have different things they bring to the table and different personality traits with how they do stuff. And, I haven't always hired believers. I haven't always hired people. Very rarely are you even able to get into that in an interview process. I don't feel like that's something that I make as a priority for what I do. I feel like when I pray about that stuff, when I'm hiring a staff, when I'm going through things, we've got a process that we use, but also at the same time, I'm not going to close off the opportunity for God to bring someone in and for me to be a light for them. And so I don't feel like and now some people may be that way. And definitely in some environments, if you're at a Christian, specifically a Christian environment, and that's a requirement from the school or from the environment, then you definitely have to go that route. But for me, in the environments that I've been in, I've embraced the other side of that. There's a lot of people who aren't going to those Christian environments because they don't like that environment, and little do they know what they're getting themselves into whenever they're working for somebody like me, where I'm not going to force something down their throat. I'm not going to hit them hard, but they're going to be challenged to think about life. They're going to be challenged about their foundation. And for me, if you think about it this way, I'm putting my family and hanging my hat on them, on this new person I'm bringing in, of the well-being of my kids and my wife, because my job is tied to them coming in now. And I take that heavily. That's a big responsibility. And so one thing, if there's one thing I've learned professionally, I know I'm getting a little too long-winded with it, but it's too important for me not to. I think it's just going through with a fine-tooth comb, having a good process of how you bring people in, from volunteer interns all the way up to coordinators, managers, and directors. The people you surround yourself with are vastly important to you, your family, your well-being, and your energy and pouring into them.
And I don't think that's too long-winded at all, Coach. I mean, I think if anything, that's, like you said, it's of the utmost importance, when we're going through the application process of screening applicants. It's so important to go through with a fine-tooth comb. We need to talk about it a little bit, because I don't think we talk about it enough. And even just some of the books I've been reading lately, and one of the ones I really like was called Culture Code. I'm sure, I don't know if you might have heard of that one before, but yeah. Basically, the author goes through a bunch of different, for any of our listeners who don't know what it is, a bunch of different cultures, elite cultures, whether it's military or music or athletics. And he breaks it down. And so many times in these elite cultures, they're more concerned with getting the right person on the bus or the right person a part of the organization, as opposed to the most talented, right? Because we say it here at Hofstra all the time, we can teach you the X's and O's, but changing who you are as a person, that's a little bit tougher. And so I love what you're saying there. Even a short, quick story. When I was actually an intern here about 5-6 years ago, I was actually interning with Dan Steinberg, who was one of your assistants at Weber. And I remember when he was going through the application process, he was calling me and telling me about it. And he's like, "Man, Coach Rassel has me in the hot seat," And he said there was like essays he had to write and everything. And so I could definitely attest you do a great job with that.
Thanks. Yeah, Dan was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed. Man, I had some of my deeper conversations with that guy, so
That's
it's good.
awesome. That's awesome. Well, Coach, we appreciate you coming on. We always finish every episode with the same 3 questions. We'll call them the fast finishers. I'll throw them at you now. First one is, what is your favorite book you've ever read?
Oh, favorite book. I think In a Pit with a Lion on a Snowy Day.
Nice.
Or there's I guess 2 different versions of, or similar versions of that book. But I think that's been huge for me. Mark Batterson wrote that book, and that really impacted me and changed my life heavily from a spiritual standpoint, but just in general, just a mindset.
Awesome. Favorite story from the Bible or favorite Bible verse?
Story of Joseph, and just unbelievable the faith that he lived, and how God honored that, but the people that were impacted because of him staying firm and staying strong regardless of what the situation looked like at the time. And I can relate to that heavily at different stages here and there in my life, of not having answers of why and wanting to know answers of why, but constantly still believing and keeping the faith that I'm where God wants me to be. So love that story.
No, I love it. Yeah, it's a great one. Last one. How do you define success?
Success. I'd say quick answer would be anything that brings you closer to your goals. And so you can turn pretty much anything into success if that puts you in control. And I don't say that to set low goals. I say that to stay to the process. If you think you're in an obstacle, turn that obstacle to an opportunity, and don't turn it into failures. To get back up and keep chipping away. And I'm trying to teach myself that same thing. I'm talking to myself on a parenting side of things, because I tried 10 different things and none of them work, and I'm just like pulling my hair out trying to figure out what's going on. But it's not a failure. It's success if I'm constantly trying to chip away and moving closer to a goal of just being a good father to these kids and raising them to be, godly, just leaders of future generations.
No, I love that. If there's anything I know about you, you're all about growth. And so I would expect no other definition than something about growth. Awesome. Hey, Coach, thanks for coming on the show. We're going to end the episode with some prayer time. So, I believe we talked earlier, guidance with leading your family. Is there anything else that I can be praying for you just the next few weeks, especially entering into the new year?
Wow, that's the biggest thing is constantly just trying to learn this whole parenting thing and leading the family through the professional life as well. So thank you.
Awesome. Well, let me go ahead and pray for you. Dear Lord, we just thank you for this amazing opportunity with Coach Rassel. Lord, thank you for allowing us to be able to have the opportunity and the time to be able to do this, God. We thank you for his willingness to be vulnerable and share some of the lessons he's learned, and also, God, just to provide some wisdom with some different perspective on different things regarding faith and also this profession that we are in, God. God, I pray specifically right now for Coach Rassel as he leads his family, that he would lead them in godliness and in holiness, or that he would be set apart with being faithful, God, to minister to them, to teach them the word of God, to wash his wife with the word, to teach and instruct his kids in the fear of the Lord and in the grace of the Lord. God, I pray also for him as a leader and a mentor with the Blue Jays, God, that he would just live out his faith and his core values, God, that he would do things with excellence, that he would be a servant, that he would be humble. God, I pray that you would bless Coach Rassel the rest of today, Lord. Help him to increase in his knowledge and understanding of you, God. May he be strengthened by your word and be strengthened by your power, God, as he walks in the power of the Holy Spirit. And Lord, we just ask that you would just continue to bless Coach Rassel and his ministry and his coaching ability and also his leadership and his influence, Lord. And so again, thank you for this time that we have to just pray for my brother. Just be with all of us today and be with us as we go about our days, Lord. Help us to glorify you with our thoughts, with our actions, and with the words that we say. In Jesus' name, amen.
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 Thank
awesome.
You,
all right. Well, we'll talk to you later, Coach.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Built to Last podcast, where we encourage, equip, and empower coaches to live out their core values where they live, work, and wherever they build relationships. Have a blessed day, striving to build lasting impact.